Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernst Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. John Calipari is not done yet because he just added yet another player in the 2023 recruiting class. Joey Hart is a 3-star guard out of the state of Indiana, and he decommitted from UCF earlier in this year, but he is now committed to the Kentucky Wildcats over Indiana, Rutgers, and a few other schools. I'm going to go over whether I think Joey Hart can have an impact for the Kentucky Wildcats next year, and whether I think this is the type of addition that Kentucky needed. Now, Joey Hart is a fine player. He's a 3-star recruit. He's not ranked in the top 200 of 247 sports recruiting class, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's not a good player. He's kind of a late bloomer. He's a 6'4" guard that just took a long time to develop in high school, and he really wasn't being noticed by a lot of big programs. And he went to UCF, and that's a decent school. Obviously, now they're going to the Big 12, so it would have been a Power 5 opportunity for Joey Hart, but he made the smart decision after he had a great senior season to decommit from Central Florida and potentially take a crack at getting to an even bigger school in college basketball. And you saw right out of the gate, he was getting looks from Indiana, Rutgers, Texas even, and then Kentucky, which is huge. And it shows you that sometimes decommitting late in the game, when there are still programs out there that need a player, is a smart move. And Joey Hart used his really successful senior season, where he shot over 40% from three and averaged over 22 points per game in the state of Indiana in high school, to be able to propel him to get this opportunity to play at a bigger school. And this is big for Joey Hart, and it's big for Kentucky because Indiana could have used a shooting guard, and again, he's from the state of Indiana, so Joey Hart, a lot of people thought he might go to the Hoosiers, but Indiana's still looking at some other guys as well. But Kentucky, they need players. That was the biggest thing holding the Kentucky Wildcats back this offseason so far, is that they only had 8 scholarship players before a few days ago. They just added Jordan Burks, a 3-star forward, to their massive 2023 recruiting class, and now they've added Joey Hart, a guy that can really shoot the 3 ball. He's a competitor, he's a fighter, he wants to be able to play at a high level, and I believe that he's going to do everything he possibly can to crack the Kentucky Wildcats rotation this next season in college basketball as a freshman. It will be tough being surrounded by so much talent. He might be on the back burner toward the end of the rotation, but even a few minutes overall would be huge for Joey Hart, and to be able to maybe propel him in the future to be able to play more for the Wildcats. And I think this is a good addition for John Calipari, because Kentucky needed to fill up their roster. In this modern day age of college basketball, you cannot go into a season with only 8 or 9 players. Now Kentucky's up to 10, and as long as Antonio Reeves does not enter the transfer portal and go to another program, which there are still rumors about that, it would be big for Kentucky to keep Antonio Reeves, because he's the only guy that had experience from this past year's team of playing a lot of minutes. And he's even a transfer himself from Illinois State, so it's not like he's originally from Kentucky. But where the Wildcats are going to make their bread and butter work next season is the #1 recruiting class that they've brought in. It's now up to 7 guys, and 5 of them are going to have a massive impact next season. You look at Justin Edwards, he's a 5-star small forward, 7-foot center Aaron Bradshaw, who could play power forward depending on if Ugonna Oyensu plays center. If he does improve, he's a guy that was from the 2022 recruiting class for Kentucky. He could play center. Aaron Bradshaw could play power forward, but who knows, maybe Bradshaw will play center if Ugonna Oyensu does not improve, but there has been talks of him getting better this offseason. DJ Wagner's a 5-star guard. Robert Dillingham's a 5-star guard. So those guys will be starting in the backcourt at the 1 and 2 spots, and potentially you could have Antonio Reeves at the 3 if he does return. That would be big for Kentucky, and it would really give them a solid starting 5. Reed Shepard's an in-state kid. He's a 4-star recruit. He's a really solid player. He's definitely going to get significant minutes off the bench. And Jordan Burks, again, as I mentioned before, a few days ago, he was a forward that committed to the Kentucky Wildcats. And this is fantastic news for Kentucky to have this recruiting class. Getting the #1 class in college basketball is definitely up John Calipari's forte. He's been doing it for years. He brings in talent, and this is probably the best recruiting class Kentucky has gotten in a few years, and it's definitely correlated why Kentucky's been a bit down the last few seasons, but maybe this class can get them back on track. And the only other player on Kentucky's roster is Adu Thero. He's a 3-star guard from the 2022 recruiting class as well. So this entire team is 7 freshmen, 2 guys that are going to be impending sophomores that have not played a lot of basketball for Kentucky this past season, and Antonio Reeves is the only experienced player on the roster. He's a really good shooting guard that shot 40% from 3 this past season, 14 points per game. If he does return to Kentucky, he would be the proverbial leader for these freshmen and the 2 guys returning from last year's team as well. So looking at Kentucky's roster, this is one of the most talented rosters in college basketball, and this is also why the Wildcats are already ranked in the top 25 for next season, because you cannot have Kentucky nowhere near the top 25 when you have all this talent. The talent is there for the Wildcats to be a great team next season. And Joey Hart's addition, I really like it because of the fact Kentucky needs more players, and they just could not go into college basketball with only 8 or 9 guys on the roster. Jordan Burks and Joey Hart's addition are really solid and definitely fleshes out the bench, and it gives Kentucky more options off the bench to bring in if guys in front of them are in foul trouble, or even if injuries happen, which hopefully that will not be the case. But the only thing that hurts about this addition for Kentucky is because even though Joey Hart is a player that they need to fill a spot on the roster, he's not exactly what Kentucky needs as well. I mentioned in the Jordan Burks video that Kentucky needs an experienced veteran transfer, and there are still guys available out there. Paul Mulcahy's still in the transfer portal. There are some other guys from other programs that are in the portal, and even more guys can enter the portal late in this transfer portal cycle, even like an Antonio Reeves leaving Kentucky. We don't know if that's going to happen, but there are still guys that could enter the portal late in the game that Kentucky could snatch up, and that would help John Calipari fill up the roster even more, maybe get it to around 11, 12, or even maybe fill up all 13 spots on the roster. I seriously doubt that because of the fact Kentucky definitely is going to have their work cut out for them to get 3 more players, or even 4 if Antonio Reeves leaves. But I do think that Kentucky getting Jordan Burks and Joey Hart is so important because at least now it only gives them 3 more roster spots to fill, and potentially you only would need 1 or 2 veteran transfers to really flesh out this roster and give Kentucky a chance to compete at the top of the SEC with Alabama, Arkansas, and a few other teams. Because I don't know if Kentucky's going to be able to win the SEC with just these freshmen. I think that they're going to have a lot more work cut out for them, but I do think Joey Hart's a good addition. It's not a knock against him or Calipari that they added Joey Hart, but I do think what Kentucky needs more than Joey Hart and another freshman to this recruiting class is they need experience through the transfer portal. They need a veteran forward. They need a veteran guard to be able to really help out these younger guys be able to acclimate to the college game, and it would give Kentucky a team that's got the balance of older guys and younger guys. You just cannot rely on freshmen in college basketball anymore. It's super hard to win a national title today with mostly freshmen on your team and only a couple of experienced players. Kentucky needs more experience. We'll have to see if John Calipari can get the job done, but again, Joey Hart's a good addition to help Kentucky add players to the roster, because at this point, they need anybody that they can add to the roster because they were seriously lacking in that department. They're up to 10 players, but if Cal can add a veteran transfer portal player or 2 to this roster and be able to make Kentucky a more experienced team for next season, that would work wonders in helping Kentucky have a shot to really compete at a high level in college basketball next year. But Kentucky's got a great recruiting class that will at least be exciting to watch next season for sure, and Joey Hart is a guy that I believe will want to play as hard as he possibly can to crack the rotation at Kentucky and be able to make a positive impact for the Wildcats next season. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Joey Hart committing to the Kentucky Wildcats and whether you think that he was the type player that Kentucky needed, or whether you still feel like John Calipari has to add a veteran transfer portal player or 2 to really help Kentucky be a fantastic team next season in college basketball. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.